Hello and welcome to this edition of the Education Webinar at the Hindu. Today is June 7th, and we are discussing the topic: Will the new MBBS curriculum equip doctors for today's challenges? Um, the MBBS curriculum has been in the process, it's seen many changes, just as many other aspects of education. This has been on the agenda too. And it's sought to be made more contemporary, more relevant to today's needs, today's requirements. But is it in the right direction? Is it going in the right direction? Is it fulfilling the right objectives? And is it fulfilling them? These are some critical questions that have emerged because this has been in the process for some years now, and there have been some controversies, and there were some changes to transgender and disabled persons, and it was not really friendly to them. So the courts come up with very different interventions. So in this ongoing process, we're now taking stock of this critical question. We do have a impressive lineup, but unfortunately, the one of the panelists he's in a place where there's heavy storm, and 6 hours it's been raining, and his internet is in a pretty poor shape. So he's unable to join. It's Dr. Ravi Vankedkar. He's a professor of surgery and head of coloproctology at the SBH Government Medical College in Dhule, and he's not able to join us. But we do have two other panelists who I think can more than make up for it. We have Dr. Satendra Singh. He's director and professor of physiology at the UCMS Delhi. And we also have Professor Dr. Uma Kumar. She's the founder head of the Department of Rheumatology at AIIMS Delhi. She'll be joining us soon. We have Dr. Satendra Singh right now with us, and we can start with him. Some of the things that have happened, for instance, one key change is this whole idea of competency-based medical education. Now, that is a concept that is not just in MBBS. It is being applied everywhere. So even at the foundation level, they're looking at whether students, children can perform certain specific tasks. Can they solve certain problems? Instead of just testing their knowledge, what is being tested is their ability to accomplish certain tasks, whether they're able to do them, like problem solving, communication, and so on. And this has entered the field of medical education too. And some of the other changes is learner-centric approach, more clinical exposure, and there's greater emphasis on public health as well as mental health. And there's a lot of stress on soft skills development, communication skills, how doctors are able to communicate with patients, administrators, because the healthcare industry is really growing and becoming very complex. So, and that is one direction that the curriculum is taking. And there's a natural corollary to that is the increased emphasis on soft skills. So these are the sort of challenges that are being addressed. There's, of course, other issues such as integrating Ayurveda into the mainstream MBBS curriculum. That's a topic for another day. We will discuss that in another webinar. But these are some of the changes that are ongoing. To give us a good review of what is happening, I'll toss the floor to Dr. Satendra Singh. Tell us what is going on, what is changing, and how relevant are these changes? Are they useful, practical? Are these objectives laudable enough in the first place? That's a question too, and whether this new curriculum is addressing them. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, The Hindu, for having me on your show. And just to give you a little bit background, Mr. Kalyan Raman, I think the World Federation of Medical Education, what we call as WFME, it divides the whole world into 6 regions, just as World Health Organization does. And one of the area is the Southeast Asia region or the CRO region. This region is unique because it is home to a quarter of world's population. And among its 11 nations, India has the world's largest number of medical colleges. And we produces the maximum number of international medical graduates, thereby contributing to the global physician as well as nursing diverse workforce. Therefore, it is very important that our training of health professionals is not only globally relevant, but it is also culturally competent. And this was the reason why that in most parts of the world, all of the education system, specifically the medical and the nursing education system, is moving towards a competency-based curriculum. And this was the logic why, after 21 years, way back, the erstwhile Medical Council of India in 2019 come up with a competency-based medical education curriculum. Now, this was followed by in 2021 the Indian Nursing Council. They also started their own competency-based curriculum for the nursing profession. And in this year, the National Commission for Allied Health Professionals has come up with uh, the competency curriculum for 10 of the allied professions, including physiotherapy, and it will be starting from next year onwards. The dentistry is still, sleeping. They have not yet woken up, so they have yet to change their curriculum to competency-based education. But you would see that the National Education Policy of 2020, it very clearly mentions that we need to move away from content to competency. And this is the reason why that not only health professions education, but also you would see these concepts. There is a cry from streams like architecture. There is a call from there was this recent paper published, I think in the last month only, in Frontiers 1000 Research, where the researchers from the Manipal University, they have said that why you need to have competency based education in architectural curriculum. So this is need of the hour. No doubt, what NMC has done is, worth praising, in the sense that now there is a uniform curriculum. But having said that, there is a lot of critique of this new CBME, and now we already have 5 years of its implementation. In 2019, the new batch came, which was trained in competency-based medical education curriculum, and they passed out last year in 2024. So after 5 years, the NMC again revised its curriculum, but again it was uh, critiqued by activists in general, but also, but one of the common critiques were that, number one, there was no involvement of the real stakeholders, which were the student population. In fact, the World Federation of Medical Education also says that you need to involve students in medical education, either it is undergraduate or it is postgraduate. The second one was there was defiance of law. We have laws like Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, Transgender Persons Protections Act, which talks about mandatory disability training in all the curriculum, not only of medical but also dentistry, occupational therapist, and all other allied health professionals, which was not followed in the form of mandatory disability competencies. And the third was the lack of social responsibility, that in India, because of our huge diversity, because you would see that India is home to world's largest number of tribal population, and you would not find a single chapter on tribal health in the massive 369 volumes 1, 2, and 3 of the competency-based medical education. So these are the some of the flip, lacunas which are there and which are the controversial points, and we can talk about more as the show progresses.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was brief and it was very well informed. Thank you, Dr. Satyendra Singh. I now invite Dr. Uma Kumar. She's a pioneer in this field. We had a little discussion and she was pointing out that the Madras Medical College is actually a precursor. They had a department of rheumatology even before AIMS. But yes, but tell us, how do you, since you've seen this progress, and how do you see the current curriculum? The first batch, as Dr. Satyendra Singh has pointed out, it's come out, and what are they saying? And what are other doctors saying in regards to who the batch that has come out now? What has been achieved? What is missing? And what is your take?
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me on the show. Background has been very beautifully described by Dr. Satyendra, and he has talked about the critiques as well, so I don't need to touch upon that. Look, looking at the curriculum, I feel at the end of the day, people are happy, and whatever deficiencies were there, they will be taken care of for sure. And going with the time is very, very important. And when we are talking about, it's not about only knowledge; it's about how that knowledge translates to society, good, or for the patients in this case. But i- the current curriculum actually includes all those segments which are needed for that. Because in current times, when the numbers are huge, when the students, when they enter the medical profession, uh, the seats has gone up, so they have to actually dealing direct, for them to go to the patient directly is not actually very appreciative. And so there is a provision for skill lab development, so the students can learn on mannequins and they are well prepared when they receive the first patient. There have been too much emphasis on communication, which I'm sure people will understand that's so important. Because what happens sometimes in medical profession, we are doing everything right, but the things are not communicated well, and it results in the turmoil which we see day in and out. And then the other thing which is included in this curriculum is having foundation course at the very beginning when students join. What happens sometimes when the students, they are getting selected to medical profession, there is transformation, and they are in the school, then suddenly they are going to college, and that too in the medical profession, which requires too much of professionalism and ethics. And the attitude has also to be the right, and they have too much of apprehension within them, what kind of college this would be, and how teachers would be, and what are supposed to do. And sometimes we are getting students from very remote areas who are not well versed with English or the language where they go for training. For that, this foundation course, 1 month foundation course, is really going to help them. It's very structured. And then bringing objectivity to assessment is also very important. And as has been talked about, we have to be at par or even the better than what world talks about. And so I would say that the current curriculum is uh, the need of the hour, and it has happened now.
Okay. We'll have a follow-up question. Questions are already coming in. People are watching are already posting questions. There's some very good questions coming in. Well, I do want to say that good questions, or those who post good questions, will get free online access to the Hindu, or free access to the online edition of the Hindu. It's a virtual treasure trove of information, all the articles, archives, all the lovely stuff that is there, that is the Hindu has put out online and in newspaper, will be available. So kindly participate, ask good questions. Moving on, sir, Dr. Satyendra Singh, one of the things, this whole idea of competency based, it seems that doctors should have been doing it already. Or what was missing? Like, somebody, when you graduate, how do you think doctors are better now because of this particular aspect of competency based curriculum? What is it that you did or you didn't do, and the doctors now are probably doing better?
Yeah, one of the important thing was that in our traditional curriculum, there was no mention of clinical medical ethics. So there was a huge lacuna in the previous curriculum because there was no structured training on medical ethics, and we already see that there are a couple of questions that how the new MBBS curriculum prepares students to handle ethical dilemmas. So there was one thing, a huge thing, and I mean, being in a hospital is a difficult time for everyone. And in India, what we see is normally that the doctor-patient relationship is more towards the patriarchal approach, where we see a doctor or a health professional more as a god rather than somebody as a normal human being. And that shifts the balance, the power, the lack of autonomy which is there in the patients is very stark. So that is why it is very important that one of the key highlight of this new competency-based medical education curriculum was that there was a longitudinal module of entire 4.5 years of medical ethics, which is known as ATCOM, and the full form is Attitude, Ethics, and Communication. So it runs longitudinally right from the year one to the final year. But if you compare it with other professions like nursing, you won't find this as a longitudinal module. Rather, there is in the year three there is some mention of ethics, and similarly, you would see the same thing in the new proposed physiotherapy curriculum as well. And unfortunately, the same thing is in we also have around 4 institutions of national importance. There are 20 Institute of Medical Sciences, JIPMER in Pondicherry, PGI Chandigarh, and Nimhans in Bangalore. So they have their own curriculum. It is not competency-based curriculum. It is they don't fall under the purview of commission. So they have a different type of a curriculum. So that is the lacuna which was there, that there was a need for ethics, but it is being integrated, but only in the medical education, not in nursing or physiotherapy curriculum. And also at volume this module platform, it is 85 pages, and if you just type the keyword dignity, you would be surprised that you will get zero results. Now, which is very surprising, because when we are talking about a patient-provider relationship, the main thing should be respect for dignity and autonomy. So there is no mention of the word entirely in the 85 pages curriculum of ATCOM. So that was a significant letdown. Uh, and that is why it is important that when we are talking about Pan India of this new ethics curriculum, is that it is quite taken from the Western cultural context. Names have been changed. For example, Jack has become Jay, but the cultural context remains the Western one. And that is why it is important that in India we our own cultural context and diversity. Let me give you an example. In 1979, the government of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, they disallowed members of a particularly vulnerable tribe, Baigya tribe, to avail their constitutional right of having a system. The reason for that was that their population was diminishing, and that time the health thought this would be the best possible approach. From 1979, the women from the Baigya community were devoid of their constitutional right, and their population exploded. The case litigation was passed in the High Court by one of the women who had 7 children that time, and by the time the judgment came, she had 11 children. So this is a common example, and they could not avail these contraceptive even from a different state, because they can be identified by a typical tattoo on their forehead. So these are the stories which are happening from our own Indian cultural context, and they should be telling the reader and the future health professionals what are the various ethical dilemmas, what to do, what not to do. Second example, one of the many times we see that the gender identity and expression is not given due consideration in the new curriculum by the National Medical Commission. Some people say that these are woke concepts. Now, we already have a law passed by the Indian Parliament, which is Transgender Persons Protections Act. And last year, we saw that in the state of Kerala, a transgender man gave birth to a child. And this year itself, the court has given them the right that they can change the name in the birth certificate as parent rather than father or mother. So these are not woke concepts or Western concepts, because we have an Indian law protecting these community, and we need such examples in the curriculum. You see the textbook of physiology, you see the textbook of gynecology and obstetrics. You won't find anything gender physiology. There is a male reproductive system, there is a female reproductive system. There is a chapter on pregnancy, there is a chapter on contraception. The question is that if there is a transgender man with a uterus, is it not his right to avail contraceptive services? Is our curriculum preparing future health professionals in that regard? The answer is no.
Okay, so we still have some more to go, and perhaps even take on this criticism that this is all too woke. In fact, that came up in the whole controversy about the how the curriculum treats, the issue of transgender and disabled. Was it too woke? And the curriculum seemed to be a little regressive, I suppose. Many activists were saying that it doesn't really address contemporary concerns. We'll come back to that. We have some really excellent questions. You were talking about ethics and the grounding in ethics that the current curriculum seems to want to emphasize. There's a nice question, Veda Varshini. She's saying, "Hi, I'm Veda from Chennai, and my question is, in emotionally complex cases like deciding which conjoined twins to save when both can't survive, how is the MBBS curriculum preparing students to handle such real life ethical trauma and moral judgment?" Dr. Uma Kumar, would you like to address this?
That's a very good question, and many a time we professionals do face such situations in our practice. As has been rightly pointed out, there are certain things which are not being made very clear. But one would have to understand the medical students in particular, because for every situation, there cannot be a judgment, there cannot be an answer to that. And therefore, the emphasis has been put on having discussions on these issues throughout 4.5 years of course, and also in that foundation course, I know, which is very short for 1 month. The emphasis is given on various ethical dilemmas, professionalism. So therefore, it's when we need to decide on such aspects, we have to keep our wisdom, our available laws and ethics in mind while deciding it. It's not so simple to reply to it. Maybe Dr. Satindra would like to add to it.
Would you like to, sir?
Yeah, I think there are two issues over here. Number one is that if you look at the CBME curriculum, which is being followed by all 730 plus medical colleges in our country, now we have the longitudinal medical ethics curriculum. So they have a solid grounding. It is no more relegated only to the 1 month. We do have a foundation course, but in the initial 3 years, it was for 1 year. Later, National Medical Commission, as they are known for, changing and rechanging multiple times the curriculum. Now it has been restricted to only 2 weeks. On the contrary, at INIs like AIMS New Delhi, they have a 1 month of foundation course. But even at all of these INIs, what we want is that that ethics should be taught not only for 1 month in foundation course, but it should be part of regular 4.5 years of MBBS. And we do have these four biomedical ethics principles, which are now part of the curriculum. So we gradually increase the amount of complexity from year one to say year five. So that way, I think it is one of the biggest positive which has come out of the NMC CBME is that now there is a lot of time devoted to medical ethics. But having said that, the second flip side is that do we have adequate number of teachers who are actually trained in clinical medicine? That having said that, I think the National Medical Commission they have given free hand to medical educators that they can use different type of techniques to teach clinical medical ethics. So one of the things which we very often is from the field of health humanities. Now, medical humanities or health humanities is something which is not tool given in a didactic type of a whereas it is the exploration of different or things like poetry, things like theater, things like visual arts, philosophy, and law. And many times we include lived experience there. For example, we often have this session of medicine's most important teacher, where we involve patients in the class, where there are no patients looking for help, rather they are the experts of their own conditions. And medical students haven't had an interaction with them right from year one. So we have used it for discovery competencies, we have used it for competencies, and it is a pivotal tool because it's heavily focused on the thereby it becomes very easier for medical students to understand the complex ethical dilemmas which are there. If I can give you just one example, Recently, the Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR, has come up with the definitions of DNR, do not attempt resuscitation, in the end of life care. So there are different ways to teach the same concept. You can have a PowerPoint presentation, talk for hours and hours. What we often use is the tool from humanities, which is poetry. So I would like to recite a very, very short poem written by a medical postgraduate from India, Kamna Kakkar, from anesthesiologist from Rohtak. And this poem goes like this: When I die, just let me die. Don't put in any tubes or pipes. Don't push in breaths against my will and food through punctures in my skin. Don't wait for me to open my eyes. Don't ask them when, how, and why. Don't dare drug me to paralyze. Don't undress me if in peace I lie. Let death be my final wish. Let hours be my final kiss. If lifetime of grace honored, admired, if vegetable isn't how I want to be retired, don't let yourself suffer anymore. It will never be the same again, I'm sure. As I choose my kind of grave, you could choose to be brave. Let grief wound you once or twice. Don't let it be your way of life. So, no hospice. When the time is near, I have chosen to be at home, my dear. This is an example how you can teach palliative care with the help of poetry. And we have published literature on this in Indian Journal of Medical Ethics, that how these tools are more empowering and more engaging with the undergraduate medical education with students rather than the routine PowerPoint techniques. And I'm glad you mentioned in the morning, in the initial part, you mentioned the word soft skills. So I have, aversion to this word, because when you say soft skills, these are, considered as optional things. But ethics, communication skills, and health humanities, these shouldn't be optional thing. Rather, these are mandatory skills for a future doctor or a future healthcare professional.
Okay, very nicely put. Poignant poem, I suppose. Poetry has its use in medical education too. Um, when will we start using
I would
poetry
actually
in
like to say
engineering?
that understanding or learning soft skills or learning ethics and professionalism, it's the round the life process. It cannot happen in a day. One can actually make person understand what these are all about and how important they are, but ultimately doctors will have to do that and practice it themselves. That's what I feel.
Well, I suppose the curriculum is there to at least tune the students to that aspect. Earlier, perhaps it wasn't. We have another question, several questions actually. I'll keep posting them here. Prashant Gowda, he's asking, hello, Prashant here from Muscat, Oman. My question is, NMC claims that CBME produces competent doctors, but how are clinical skills objectively quantified when OSCE scores vary wildly between colleges? Will LMC publish annual skill audit data to prove CBME's impact, or is competency just a paperwork exercise? Really nice question. It goes to the heart of our discussion. What do you say, sir?
Yeah, there was a logic behind the use of CBME or competency-based curriculum, because in assessment now we have new tools. For example, as rightly mentioned by Prashant over here, OSCE, or in other words, Objective Structured Clinical Examination. It is how you can assess, clinical skills in a checklist fashion. Now, one of the main reason for introducing this was to, do away with subjectivity. What can happen now is that even if there is a non-medical staff or non-teaching people who are over there, they can assess a medical graduate if they have that checklist, or because they have to identify which parts. We basically break down the competence into several subsets or subparts, and we can see whether the person is demonstrating those skills or not. So that way, the question of subjectivity goes away, because we often see that sometimes there are examiners who are very subjective, right? You would see that there is a huge difference between the number of marks given by one examiner versus the second examiner. So these are the things by which we can actually bring objectivity into our new curriculum. But having said that, one of the critique of the competency-based curriculum is that there is a lot of objectivity because there is a lot of focus on checklist, and that is true because if you are talking about the affective domain, or in other words, the emotional part, it is very difficult to objectify, the emotional component or the affective domain. So many a times, these checklists won't help over there. But what we can have is that student reflection is one thing which can, reflective writing is one thing which can adequately gauge the amount of knowledge gained in the effective domain. So there are different of these assessment tools by the National Medical Commission, which they have provided, that flexibility is given to the educators. So I think in that way, we are on the right track. But having said that, as I said, for what you call soft skills or what I call as the affective domain, we need to bring in other subjective elements as well.
But is there a universal standard? How do you, as Prashant is asking, will NMC publish annual skill audit data to prove CBME's impact, or is competency just a paperwork exercise?
Yeah, data wise, I think that is the onus lies upon the National Medical Commission, because, as I said earlier, one of the critique of CBME was that many people thought that this is, old wine in a new bottle. And if you look at the National Faculty Development Program of National Medical Commission, they have around 22 regional center and 10 nodal centers for imparting training on medical education. But the NMC, they just introduced the new CBME curriculum, that they came up with a document and told the medical colleges that now this is your baby, you have to implement it. The ideal thing would have been that if 10 of these nodal centers, which are on the faculty development medical education, they should have piloted this in Indian context. Because if you look at, I agree to some extent what Mr. Gowda is saying, that some of the concept like problem based learning, they have their flaws in Indian context, and that is why they are not that successful, and that is why many of the institutions are using hybrid PBL based thing. Then the curriculum is largely focused on small group teaching. The problem is that if you look at, even in the Delhi, the colleges like Maulana Azad Medical College or Lady Harding Medical College, the number of medical students over there, they are 250, 270. Now, with that amount of medical students in a lecture theater, you cannot impart, small group teaching, which is largely for 20 students, 25 students. So there are logistical barriers, there are infrastructural barriers which are there. So that is why the NMC is probably shying away from publishing an annual skill audit data. Though on the website you would see that the amount of workshops being done by the nodal centers and regional centers, they are just like our government. They are very fond of saying that, quote unquote, so many doctors who are trained in medical education. But having said that, the real data is that how your students are performing. Just by having a workshop, you cannot claim that you have, quote unquote, trained medical educators in the new skills of medical education.
But the CBME does seems to be the flavor of the day. We had this news that it is being applied in 10 other allied professions too, not just in MBBS. We had that, and whether we have the infrastructure support, faculty training to provide that in those 10 allied professions. That was a question, but that seems to be the way things are going. But I think Prashant has a very valid point, I suppose. Okay, moving on. Shlok, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correct. Shlok, her last name correct. Shlok Ingol. Okay. I have a question. How is a curriculum recognizing student welfare? Is there any provision to teach the teachers about the same? Dr. Uma Kumar, would you like to address this?
Sure. Yes, in the curriculum, there are provision to take care of students' welfare. In fact, I would take it and explain it the way, from the very beginning, when we talk about having them foundation courses, that somewhere involves student welfare. They to reduce their anxiety, apprehension, making them understand what they are supposed to do during their training. And then there are provision, I would say, electives of 2 months, where they can actually, while doing their medical course, decide whether they like a particular stream or not. They can take subject of their choice for 2 months and work on it. And because sometimes it happens, you have no idea about when you go on to your post graduation, and you end up choosing a particular stream, and then you decide that, and you find it not suitable for you, and you end up giving re-exam. So there's this provision is going to help them. uh, then also, for students, basic, having good teachers, there are provisions for, as been talked about by Dr. Satendra, for teaching the trainers. And so that again involves the student welfare, and then taking care of their mental health and their more interactions with the students. And also student welfare when, when student goes to the clinical side. uh, Initially it was in the third year of their training, but now that exposure is supposed to be at the very beginning, and they are being prepared for it. So it's all very slow and gradual uh, movement towards their final target, which they are going to have at the end of their MBBS training. So I would say, yes, there are provisions. There could be lacunae, but there are surely there are provisions for students' welfare in this curriculum. Maybe Dr. Sanendra can add to the lacunae because he's
Yeah,
been.
so if you look at the 1 month of course of foundation syllabus of the foundation course, which is put up on the website of the National Medical Commission, now it is reduced to 2 weeks. So the onus lies on the medical college, which topics they would like to take within those proposed 2 weeks. So it is entirely up to them, but there is a mention of mental health or wellness or stress management. Now the onus lies on the individual medical colleges that how they are taking those particular sessions. If I give you an example, we are doing at University College of Medical Sciences, we have a psychological assessment of the medical student within the 2 weeks of foundation course. The purpose of doing that is through questionnaire is that we are able to notice if there are some red flags or there are some students who have mild or moderate to severe depression. If there are certain, if we are able to find those students, then we can refer them to our clinical psychologist. So that onus lies upon the individual medical colleges. The second thing is that National Medical Commission provides 5% of reservations to students with disabilities. But the problem is that they just label them as PWD candidates. But after that, there is no guidance from the National Medical Commission on how to provide them clinical accommodations. There was this recent Supreme Court case where I was involved as an expert, and based on my recommendations, the Honorable Supreme Court of India in Om Rathod judgment, they have directed the National Medical Commission that they need to have come up with a guidance on how to provide reasonable accommodation to students with disabilities. The third example is that when the students join, there is a test of their color vision deficiency, or what we call in layman language as color blindness. Color blind individuals can do MBBS. There is no harm. There is no barring on that. Supreme Court has already allowed that. But the thing is that when you know that they are diagnosed with color blindness, what are the steps being taken up by the medical institution or the faculty members? So these are the questions for individual faculty, for individual colleges, how to come up with a structured guidance for such students and how to provide them. Similarly, you would find that more or less the guidance are coming from the University Grant Commission on Student Welfare rather than coming up from the National Medical Commission. So UGC has time and again come up with various guidelines which are there on student welfare, which every institution needs to be implementing. One common example is that every college must have an enabling unit for students with disabilities. But if you look at the all of these 730 medical colleges in India, except at UCMS, I have not seen any other medical college having an equal opportunity cell or an enabling unit specifically for students with disabilities. So we are very good in making good guidelines. The problem lies in its implementation part.
Yes, there was a Supreme Court judgment saying even if somebody is 40% disability, you cannot rule him out. I think the standards for disabled being are, made or disqualified from medical education. I think those standards have changed a
Yeah,
lot
there
these.
are two different landmark judgments. One I mentioned about Om Rathod judgment. The second was Anmol judgment by the Honorable Supreme Court of India, where the existing guidelines of National Medical Commission was that you need to have all 10 fingers intact to become a medical doctor. Even if you have a one missing finger, you cannot become a doctor. Now, these are very weird guidelines, which lack scientific evidence. And this person who went to all the way to the Supreme Court of India that, I want to become a medical doctor, and his assessment was done at an institution of national importance. And they said that no, his all 10 fingers are not there, he cannot become doctor. So again, the Supreme Court said that, they asked me to co-opted as a member of the medical board at AIMS New Delhi, but the five faculty members of that medical board said that as per the guidelines, he do not have all 10 fingers. So they said that we cannot allow him. But I asked him that, as Dr. Uma was rightly mentioning, that one of the key feature of CBMA is simulation. So I said that, let's examine the student in the simulation lab of All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And we examined him, we gave him multiple tasks. But he was shown that how to do a CPR. And after that, we asked him to demonstrate the CPR on a mannequin. He was able to do that. Then we showed him how to, draw injection blood, how to give an injection on an intramuscular way on a mannequin. And he was able to do that. So there was, at least for me, there was no reason to declare such candidate as incompetent or unfit. So I gave a dissent report to the Honorable Supreme Court of India that, as per my observation, this person has, and that is the ethos of competency-based medical education, that you should be able to demonstrate or perform. And he was able to demonstrate whatever has been asked of it, and that too despite not being a medical student. It was his first exposure to a simulation lab, and that too in country's premier medical institution. So based on that, my report, the Honorable Supreme Court of India, they agreed with that, and they said that the principle of both hands intact or all 10 fingers intact is ableist, and they have asked the National Medical Commission to change these standards in line with the human rights principle and in the ethos of the competency-based principles.
There is still some questions. We're going back a little to a topic that we were discussing. Veda Vashini, she keeps asking. I suppose she's a student currently, and she's asking about empathy and medical burnout, emotional resilience training, or is it just that okay, now you're an MBBS, you're going to be a doctor, you need to have compassion, you need to have innate strength, otherwise you're not qualified. Is that still the attitude, or is there enough stress on medical burnout, stress and related issues, emotional care, I suppose? How would you, in your career, it's a personal question, you as a practicing physician, how have you dealt with, did you ever feel that you're going to burn out? You've seen burnouts among doctors, right? How do they deal with it? How have you dealt with it
If I
So
personally?
take
the
it,
first, yeah, after you, ma'am, please.
please go ahead. Go ahead.
So we did a research on the undergraduate medical students of University College of Medical Sciences. We used the Jefferson scale of clinical empathy. You talked about empathy, and we were interested in knowing that how the empathy level of medical students vary from year one to final year. And we found that in the first year they're very motivated and they're very empathetic, but they attain a plateau after fourth year or fifth year, and our findings were in sync with other studies which are being done in India or nation regions, that there is something in the curriculum which somehow which is uh, which is making our students that they are detaching empathy from their routine activities and they are facing burnout. But having said that, in the new curriculum, as I said, the DETCOM is now a longitudinal part of the curriculum. So there are enough hours dedicated to the curriculum. But the onus lies on individual medical institutions. So here I would like to give the benefit of doubt to the National Medical Commission that they have provided the minimum, standards. You can go beyond whatever you want to have. So within those hours which are there in the ATCOM, in all of those 5 years of medical education on medical ethics, you can involve different ways by which you can impart empathy. Some of the things which we are doing is that we often involve theater of the oppressed, which allow students to come and take the place of the oppressed person and to come in the shoes of the person who is struggling, whether it is a patient or it is some other person. So these are different ways, and many a times experiential models are the ones, or experiential learning is the way forward by which you can impart medical these empathy to medical students. So there is dedicated time slot available. The onus lies on medical education units of the institutions, or in the aims we call them as the CMET, which is the Center for Medical Education Technologies. They often provide workshops of faculty members. At least if, I remember AIMS has a very dedicated faculty for CMET staff, and they keep on organizing these different things. So yes, there is a training available to them. It is depends upon the interested faculty members how motivated they are in their medical education unit, because ultimately it depends upon the faculty how they are imparting these sessions. If it is only purely didactic, and of course it's not going to help. But you involve more experiential sessions, then of course there are chances by which people can imbibe a lot from the others' lived experiences, from more of these things, and they can become more empathetic and prevent burnout. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, actually, I would just like to share one experience. Just share out of interest, I did an observational study at AIMS, where just the same way you did, Dr. Satendra, uh, talking to first year, second years, third year, and the final year students. I also found the decline, and then I tried to find out after interacting with few students what was the reason for this declining empathy. And surprising facts came out, and they said the first was work burden or stress. That was one. They don't have time to have their own activities which they enjoy most, like music or sports or talking to friends, going to movie. They don't get time for it. That's too much they have to read. Then second was the peer pressure. There were few who were able to finish work in a certain period of time. There were others who were taking longer. And language barriers, not getting good food, not getting proper sleep. The attitude of, I would say, I won't say teachers, like staff collectively. So all those factors actually contributed. They felt very irritated, and that was a reason there was declining empathy when they're entering, as you rightly said, that they are very motivated when they join the course and they are ready to do anything. But as the time passes by and they grow, they start feeling very burnt out, agitated, irritated. They want to do medicine, but there are lots of other factors which pitch in. So I think we'll have to address those aspects as well. And these small group teachings can actually take care of that, but the large number of students and few teachers, they cannot address that. So somewhere I think the curriculum cannot take care of these things
Everything.
at, yeah, everything, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now we move on to some hard aspects as well. We dealt a little bit with some of the soft issues, if I can call them that. Shreyam Singh. Well, there's we'll come to that question a little later, but there's a whole lot of questions about whether the curriculum is contemporary enough. There are all kinds of AI, for instance. AI is being applied everywhere. It's crept up on every discipline. People don't know how to teach. Well, the faculty AI is fairly recent, but it's being applied in almost every field. AI in engineering, AI in medicine, healthcare. We even had a webinar on AI in healthcare. But is there anyone there to teach it? Is the curriculum in tune with that? There were some questions on how patients, it's another issue, but we can still answer that because it deals with current trends. Patients get all their information from Google, from WhatsApp universities. How do doctors deal with that? Is that something that you teach in the curriculum? Veda Vashini, by the way, Veda Vashini says she's a class 10 student, but she's asking all these insightful question. She wants to be a doctor. She's asking what provisions are in place to update the curriculum regularly in sync with evolving medical breakthroughs like mRNA tech. Well, pandemic, that will come to that. mRNA tech, CRISP, I don't know what that is, or wearable diagnostics. I mean, how contemporary is the curriculum now? Because so many things are changing so quickly. As practicing doctors, you are dealing with these things, but if you go and teach, are you teaching what you're dealing with in your clinical practice? Are you teaching them to students?
Look, I would like to answer it in a way like, uh, when we talk about contemporariness of the medical curriculum and the aspects which we touched upon, like teaching, evaluation, using AI or digital format in teaching, which is there for long and it is going to stay and evolve further. But as far as medical education is concerned, the basic values are very very important. And when we say contemporariness, yes, we this is pretty contemporary. That is the region we are talking about objectivity. We are taking care of the students, and also the mentors, also taking care of, we had just a pandemic and how to deal with it, therefore keeping that in mind, exposing students to clinical skills, and there's a provision for students to go to the community and interact with the people there. uh, so that also kind of helps in shaping up the students. So as far as contemporariness is concerned, it's absolutely, I would say, yes. But when we talk about all those little nuances of as mRNA or any other NGS, any advanced technology, gradually one gets into that domain. It's not that at the basic level students are going to get the hold of it and they have to understand it completely, but they need to know what is going around the world. And when they kind of post graduate or go to some specialization, then it would be easier for them to understand.
Yeah, just to add to what Dr. Uma has said, and I'm very glad whether you are asking all the right questions. Just to allay your anxiety, if you join MBBS in the first year, in physiology, we will teach you about CRISPR. So, Mr. Kalyan Raman, CRISPR is basically a gene editing technology by which we can
Okay.
modify DNA. So, we will teach you about CRISPR, first of all, in physiology. We will also teach that you in the first year in biochemistry. Then you would learn more about this in pathology also, and finally in the medicine also. But having said that, CRISPR, as you have rightly said, I mean, this is a gene editing technique. It has a lot of ethical issues which are being involved. And therefore, in the ATCOM module on ethics, we often talk about, at least I take those sessions where I talk about the moral dilemma and ethical aspects of, the CRISPR technique. And to add on that also, with the newer infectious diseases coming up like the COVID-19, the National Medical Commission has now come up with a pandemic module. So they are updating the curriculum. So there is a pandemic module now, which has to be part of the regular 5 years of MBBS curriculum. And in addition to that, I remember the former head of Department of Physiology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Dr. Kochar. She partnered with the Department of Ministry of IT, Information and Technology, and they come up with an online module known as Prakashmay, where it was largely for the training of healthcare workers on COVID-19. So that way, yes, we are to some extent equipped.
Okay, we go a little off tangent, but it's a very, very interesting question. It's very personal and very, there are two parts to it. One is very inspirational. I am Shreyam Singh, the questioner. He's saying, I'm Shreyam Singh and want to study medicine because I have seen my mother and sisters struggle with gynecological problems but not get relief until they met really experienced doctors who educated them on overall wellness and lifestyle changes. My question is, how can MBBS training incorporate practices on overall female and gynecological health that draw on the knowledge from other disciplines like anthropology, public policy, women and trans people's rights, advocacy, and other areas? You're still thinking?
Yeah, so if I
Either.
can, so of course, doctors vary from areas to areas, institutions to institutions, and uh, I'm sorry that the doctors which whom you met were not that empathetic initially. But having said that, if you go to good institutions, definitely we have remarkable faculty members in India, even in the OBG field, obstetrics and gynecology, and you are more than welcome to join MBBS and become an OBG person as well. Regarding what you mentioned about that, Ken, is our curriculum drawing inspirations from other disciplines? So, therefore, the namesake, there is a mention of medical humanities in the first year of curriculum, but it is not yet defined. But as I have been saying repeatedly, that we have been using it. In fact, we were one of the first medical college in the country to start a medical humanities department in 2011, and also but other institutions have to keep pace with that, because if you look at the uh, AIMS Act of 1956, way back in 1956, the section 14 of which is on the functions of the institute reads very categorically that institutes may provide for the teaching of humanities in the undergraduate course, and that's what you are saying. When we're talking about anthropology or trans people's right, all of these falls in the realm of medical humanities. But unfortunately, it is not a full-fledged, dedicated thing in the medical curriculum in India. There are institutions who are working in this field, but largely in silos. And this is also something where World Health Organization in the Southeast Asia region organization, in one of the regional meet at Colombo, they have come up with a resolution that humanities should be a mandatory part of health workers education. And recently, this was again reinstated in the recently concluded World Health Summit at the Bharat Mandapam last month in India. So yes, that is something, because we often use, because there is a lot of learning if you are using the lens of anthropology to study the diagnosis of an illness. There cannot be no doubts about that, the usefulness of health humanities or medical humanities in medical profession.
Over to Dr. Kumar.
Oh, yes, I agree. And experiences actually shape us and help us in making what we are, as because of this Shreyam's relative's illness, he decided to join the medicine, and he's most welcome in that. Doctors are not bad. You know what happens sometimes? There could be missed.
I think we lost her. We'll probably move on. So yeah, there are two parts to that question. One was, of course, women's reproductive. It's a common experience. I think even men, boys, when they grow up and they see their mothers and sisters suffering for various at various stages in their life, and they think, why can't their problems be addressed? I think that's a very sensitive, valid point. And the second part is, of course, there's so much talk about multidisciplinarity of education, cross discipline. How cross discipline should medical education even get? I think that's a question. And of course, Dr. Singh is saying, medical humanities is certainly worthwhile. It should be taught. We'll move on to other. We have several questions. We had one interesting question. It's Dr. Nonita Gangwani. She's a doctor, and she feels, I think she's a little experienced. She's a little senior, and she's saying students these days, Gen Z, don't respect teachers. Even after teaching ethics, we don't see any change in their attitude. How do you see, sir? How are your students? Are they respectful? Are they, or is it that why should I respect you? You're just here doing a job.
I think these are interpersonal skills, and definitely our generation is changing. Of course, these are Gen Z, so they are very highly motivated in the sense that they know what is their goal. So, and I think one of the main reasons to blame is our education system, and I'm not talking about higher education system, but at the school level. right from class, I think it's now from class 8th, they are preparing MCQ to clear either IIT JEE or NEET PG or NEET UG, isn't it? Many of the people go to dummy schools, so they are not in the schools. They don't learn those tricks and traits. They are highly focused on becoming expert in cracking those MCQ examinations. And this is a recent trend since I teach in the first year of medical college in physiology. So even I have noticed that over the past 4 or 5 years, our new generation students, they actually struggle when we give them a long answer question or a short answer question. You give them MCQ and they are just like master of all MCQs. They will immediately solve it. The problem is that when you have to describe something, they fail miserably into that because we are losing that art of writing long questions because they are only focused on the coaching culture is teaching them that you have to crack medical entrance examinations, and they are heavily focused on that. And compare that with the medical students in the countries like United States of America. They in those countries join medical college after finishing graduation at the age of 24 or 25. And on the contrary, in India, they join at when they are 17 years of age or 18 years of age. They have not seen the world, and what they have only seen is that they have to become a doctor. They are heavily focused on MCQ. So I think we have to blame our current school system also, which are not producing thinking medical or rather thinking students. But unfortunately, even our medical system is also producing those robots who are masters of checklist. Even that has been seen in when they go for USMLE or lab examinations. When there is a camera on them, they would fulfill all those effective domain checklists. They will ask respectfully. They will comply to each and every thing which is there for effective domain. But on the contrary, if you look at them in working in the wards or in the routine OPD or routine operation theater, things are different. So it's a challenge not only for us, but also for not only for faculty members, but also for our education system how to deal with it.
Just to add to it a bit, because there has been a decline in our, you know, value system in general in the society, as she was telling that students are not respecting teachers, and because of the cultural shift, lots of things are happening which we all are witnessing, and it's not that with a time and with guidance and supervision those things cannot be changed, because we teachers have to be the role models, and sometimes students end up changing their habits, their value system, and for the good. So I would say nothing to get disappointed about. It's perennial, and in all institutions this is very this is a new normal, I would say. But yes, we all have to work towards engaging them, because ultimately this is going to influence our students in the long way.
Okay. I had a question. There was, I did see that they have a pandemic module in the MBBS now. What has been the learning from the pandemic that you think should be taught to MBBS students? Does the module address those issues?
It was largely on the management part of COVID-19. But apart from that, our learnings from the pandemic has been that first of all, we have to switch to alternate modes of instructions. We all have to switch to online learning. So of course, there was a huge challenge specifically for MBBS training because you can impart cognitive knowledge to them through online, but the challenge was during the psychomotor assessment. How would you assess those skills in online way? So that was a huge challenge for us, and of course, some of the batches uh, had great difficulty. In fact, the 2019 and 20 batch, they had a lot of issues because there was no direct contact with what we call as the clinical material. There was no direct contact with the patients. So that was one of the lacuna. But having said that, we have learned from we have developed a lot of modules in which we can assess students online on Google Classrooms, and of course there are other ways by which we can what we call as the DOE, demonstrate, observe, and assess individuals on practical part as well. But if you look at the NMC module, it is largely on the management aspect, heavily focused on different departments like microbiology, community medicine, and the medicine part of that, treatment part of that.
Would you like to add to that, Dr. Kumar?
I felt whatever little I could read the curriculum that still a lot need to be incorporated in that, because pandemic had taught us how to actually deal with it in a timely manner without getting panicked. And it's not only about seeing patients dealing with them, also about the psychosocial aspect of it, which has to be dealt with. And the stress has given by Dr. Satyendra, he has explained it. So I think a lot needs to be done in this domain particularly. Even for we talk about educating the common people, also the medical students when they are very early in their career, joining the MBBS, they also, I would like to include them also, as you know, because they don't have much knowledge about these diseases or pandemics or any kind of infection. So basic universal precautions, and then taking care of the patients at home or in the society or in the hospital. So all those things are to be brought in. How can they protect themselves as well as the people around them, and also taking care of the patients? So I think that part I found missing, and that has to be brought in. Am I right, Dr. Satyendra?
Yes, I completely agree with you.
Okay, Prashant Gowda, by the way, he's an assistant professor of pediatrics. He was the one who was asking all these questions about CBME and audit and how do you assess CBME's impact. He had a couple of points to make, not questions. He said CBME 2.0 needs a lot of fine tuning. That's one of his observations. And he's also talking about digital professionalism is another area that I think may need to be taught or at least exposed to students.
This is an important area because digital professionalism is something which we are, being a medical doctor, we have to be very wary of that, because how we are in front of our medical students, they notice it. So they are very sharp in noticing that when you preach a lesson on medical ethics, and vis-a-vis what when they see you, how you interact with a patient in the ward. So that is the direct observation. And moreover, that when you are on social media, this is a new thing. You air your views on social media, be it Twitter, X, or Insta or Facebook, and you have to be very careful as a medical professional what you are writing. And same is true for our medical students as well, because many times they don't understand, because of the advent of these new mobile phones. Everybody has a phone. Many a times they are indulged in those unethical activities where they are clicking photographs of, say, the cadavers or the patients in the hospitals without their explicit permissions, and they have to be at the brunt of that later on when it gets reported and there are actions on them, because these are against the guidelines of the code of medical ethics by the national medical commissions. And also you need to know what are your ethical obligations when you are interacting on these social media platforms.
Okay, on that note, I think this webinar comes to a close. Very fascinating, insightful. We didn't cover everything. It was obviously a very vast topic, but we picked some important points and we discussed them. There were some really insightful questions. Thanks for those who were watching. You really contributed to the discussion. If you have anything to say, please do go ahead and give your final word. Dr. Kumar, Dr. Singh.
No, I would, if the medical students who have joined in, or the medical aspirants, there, you don't have to lose hope. Medicine was existent even in the past, and with changing times, it has changed. So you have to keep your calm, keep your moral values, ethics, professionalism, which is important in all domains of life. So, and more so in medical profession, and the curriculum is made keeping you in mind. So this is what I like to tell them, and all the best.
Yeah, I would like to say that solutions to healthcare or healthcare disparities in India lies in generalists and not in specialists. We are in this mad race where we are opening new medical colleges every now and then, rather than addressing the systemic barriers which are existing. Just for example, if you look at the field of family medicine, right, we always remember those family doctor in Indian films as well as in the pastime area, which is now being vanished. And the National Medical Commission initially started that there has to be a family medicine as a mandatory part of undergraduate medical education, but now they have removed it. Moreover, in their new gazette guidelines, what they have said is that to start a medical college, you need to have 24 departments, but now they have cut down that to 21 departments. Three key departments which they have removed are respiratory medicine. We talked about COVID, and again, there is a surge of COVID, but the NMC believes that respiratory medicine is not a key department for undergraduate medical education. They have removed emergency medicine. We keep on saying how doctors in government hospitals they are being thrashed right, left, and center. They have removed physical medicine rehabilitation, which is directly deals with disability. So that is why I think they need to reconsider what they are doing with consultation with the professional bodies. And also, if you look at the World Federation of Medical Education guidelines, what they're saying is that student involvement is a must. So I think students are the ones who are reading the CBME, and their feedback should be the most important. So that should be involved in any new policy changes which NMC or other regulatory bodies are doing. The second thing is we are not tapping the potential of senior residents. For 3 years, they teach medical students. So they should be trained in medical education pedagogy or medical education principles. And finally, all of those ethical case studies which are there in our curriculum, they needs to be centered around human rights, dignity, and social responsibility, and that too in Indian cultural context, not in the Western context. Thank you.
Thank you. I really thank the panelists and all those who joined in for your very enlightening discussion. We'll see everybody in another webinar next Saturday. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.